Welcome to the Light Up podcast. I am your host, Amy Wilkinson. I'm an intuitive guide and soul mentor. And through this podcast, you will receive conscious conversations, powerful downloads, and soul stirring activations that will both support and inspire you to tap into your intuition, follow that higher calling, and live a life aligned with your soul. Because you are here to co-create a life rich in abundance, freedom, and deep joy, and to unleash who you truly came here to be. And we're here to help you discover how to access that. So let's dive on in and light up. Hello, beautiful people. Welcome back to Light Up Podcast. Today I am joined by the wonderful Alison Potts. Ali has been on the podcast before. She also supports me in the membership that I run called Light Path Collective. I've been working with Ali and in her world for many, many years, and every conversation is just like a love note to your soul and to your heart. And this one is certainly no exception. We have a conversation around the importance of leaning into and leading from instinct rather than from what the world and the outside noise and all of the different voices and opinions are telling us to do, because we are getting bombarded with that at the moment. And so, you know, Ali is so great at paving a way back home to ourselves, and one that is drenched in a lot of self-compassion and kindness, and really honors the nature of our being, which is that we are innately instinctive, innately intuitive, and yet so many of us so often underutilize our abilities there. So I really hope that this conversation brings a little bit more light onto ways that you can start to reintegrate and start to remember your capabilities in terms of your innate instincts. So it's a beautiful conversation. Please make sure that you follow us. If you are listening to this on Spotify, hit the follow button, or if you are on Apple, iTunes, subscribe. It really helps to get this transmission out there and these conversations out there, which feel really important. And if it hits a spot in you where there is a resonance, we'd love it for you to review or to share this podcast to those in your life who would get impact from it. All right, over to the episode. Enjoy. Okay, so welcome back. Today we've got Alison Potts. I love our conversations, Ali. Everybody knows probably who's been listening to this podcast. You have been on before, and it's great to have you back today and seeing what comes up with our conversations, because who knows where we're going to go today.
Yeah, fantastic to be here.
Yeah, so we've had a little, you and I talk. Let's be honest, we probably talk most days really on our voice messages, and tuning into what's coming up and speaking about our own personal experiences. And I'm so grateful to be able to have you to bounce things off, and I know you have me as well, and it's just such a beautiful relationship. But we were chatting earlier before we came on to this about feeling into what's really alive right now, because in these transmissions, and what's really important in this podcast, is that we're going with what feels, the guidance that feels needed, and the conversations that we need to be having and speaking about that are going to support us on this path, right? On this path of conscious, whatever you want to call it, awakening, embodiment. And I think it's really important. What we were speaking to, Ali, was about how in today's world, more so than ever before, how there's just this overflow, this avalanche of information, like literally at our fingertips. I get overwhelmed by it, and I get sometimes pulled and sucked into this with the advice, the external guidance, the rules and the steps. It's seemingly harder for us to find our compass, and yet it feels more needed than ever before that we really develop a strong relationship with our instincts. And yet we're outsourcing it a lot of the time. So let's start with that, because I know that's a biggie. And then I know you've mentioned that people in your world have been struggling with this as well. So do you want to start with that?
Yeah, I will. I mean, it's interesting from my point of view as an older, one of the older people who hasn't always lived in the, I've had a lot of adult life even before the digital age.
Mm.
I've really noticed how much quicker, more and more quickly, there are more sources of information coming in. And they're not really necessarily information. When you read a suggested, let's just say, this is the diet you should be fasting, or, whatever the fad is, or I don't know, these are the books you should be reading, or this is the way you should be practicing that or the other, or this is what you should be buying. So there's a lot of should messages.
Yeah.
People really internalize that should. And when people, all of us are seeking to grow and evolve. It is an instinct inside of us. And part of that is looking for guidance, the instinct for navigation. An instinct for guidance is an instinct, right? That is how people managed for years without maps, let alone Google Maps. It's an instinct. We have homing instinct. We have a instinct to explore and all of those things. So people have questions. What's happening now is, especially the younger people, have been trained. If you have a question, look on the internet, or even before you knew you had a question, someone seems to be answering that question. What it creates is not real answers, not internal answers that are true for you, but usually more questions and confusion. Well, what am I supposed to be doing? Am I doing it right? Am I wrong? More judgment, more doubt, which is a very unsafe position to be, and less trust. Less and less trust of what you know, or what is the right way to go. Because a lot of what we're getting, it's different people's realities. Basically, you create a reality or a story and you sell that story in some way. And so in terms of being a human now, if you are going to be unconsciously or consciously reliant on so much of this outsourcing, you are not going to get answers. You're more likely to get more doubt and less feeling of less of a feeling of security, because you haven't got that trust.
I think also it kind of immobilizes us. It
Mm.
stops us from moving forward. And I see it even in like the business world and in entrepreneurship and in setting up your business. And you need to do this and you need to have all of these steps. And, if you
Mm.
can on social media or in the online world. And I know that if you really buy into that, in believing that somebody else, yes, it's great to get some tips here and there, but we have access to so much within ourselves, and what is right for somebody else or somebody else's business or their body, let's say, is not necessarily going to be right for you. And we know this, and this is what's really important, right?
That's so important, that checking in with your own body piece, because this is the embodiment piece, right?
Mm,
If you are dissociated from your own physical body, even to to give a very practical example, you're not eating intuitively, you're eating what someone else is telling you to eat. um, or you're not exercising or moving in a way that your body feels comfortable doing, or happy doing, or delighted doing, you're constantly working against your own guidance. So not only are you not getting the benefit that you could have got, and believing you are supposed to be getting benefits and wondering why you're not, maybe, or perhaps tricking yourself into thinking you are, but you're dissociating from your body more and more. And so it's harder and harder, therefore, to hear real messages that your body needs you to have, because you're giving it all this other stuff to do, not based on what it's asked for, based on what you've read, or usually through some sense of insecurity, right? When we make a choice from insecurity, like, I don't like the way I look, so I'm going to, lift weights or something, that is not that is a self-abandonment piece, really, because it's saying, first of all, it's saying, I don't like this, and second, and I'm going to improve this, and second of all, it's saying, and I'm not listening to anything else.
mm,
I'm telling this what to do. But it's the other way around, isn't it?
mm.
Our bodies are guiding us. They're the parts of us that are giving us guidance. So we're getting into this conflict, and you're right, it keeps you stuck. we move much more quickly through our feelings when we listen to our feelings, when we're feelings aware, when we're in our bodies. We'll find we move through things more quickly. We move through blocks more quickly. We move through indecision more quickly.
Mm.
If you look to the outside, you will procrastinate because you're going to get a number of different opinions. Or if you go into your head and externalize just to this source, what have I been told? How about, what have I been brought up to do? What's everyone else thinking about me? And judgments, again, you're going to get stuck because none of that has the answers. It's not the real answers, and not the ones that are for you and your destiny story, not the ones that are about you and your belonging and what you want to manifest.
Mm. So how do we change this switch then? You talk about a lot of it is, and I feel that too, in when I'm too much up in my head, I feel that disconnect, and I'm more
Mm,
easily going to look outside and be led. And even the work that I do with clients, a lot of it is that it's just that simple practice of dropping back from your head into your heart, because when we come to that place, we're able to access our guidance. We're able to access all that's there for us when we come back into present moment awareness. So, what do you believe are the requirements for tapping back into more of this instinctual nature that is our innate? We have that as our innate capacity, as our.
yeah. Well, one thing, I mean, exactly what you said. And in addition to that, on a very simple level, it is probably this has to be a conscious decision you make to um, cultivate. Our instincts need cultivating. So, some kind of somatic experiencing practice where you go into your body and you start with very practical, simple checklist. Am I tired? Am I rested? Without, just curious, without wanting to come in and change that. Am I tired? Am I rested? What does my body say? Am I hungry? Am I thirsty? What does my body say? You can tap into a list of these basic instinctive feelings. Just for many clients I've worked with, doing that in the morning, just tuning into their body and listening to answers is a revelation
Yeah.
because they haven't even asked their body what it feels like. And then beginning to, and in a parallel path to that, seeing how you can limit some external sources that you use, that you reach for automatically. Seeing every time you're like, well, I'll just check my phone or I'll just check this or check that, whether you can go back into your own body. I can tell some anecdotes too, which can be helpful. There's language we use in our self-talk that can be very revelatory about ignoring our instincts. I had somebody when I was running a training, and we talked about instincts a lot, and we often went around saying, "How do you feel? And what is the feeling telling you it would like you to, how it would respond?" And
Mm.
one of the people in the class said, "Well, my feeling is, and I've been feeling this for a long time now, that I actually want to go to bed at 6:30 p.m. I want to go to bed at 6:30 p.m." And I said, "Well, what time do you go to bed?" And she said, "About 11." And
Mm.
I said, "Is that time useful to you?" And she said, "No, no, not really." And I said, "Well, let's do it. We'll support you. Like the class will support you. Let's do an experiment tonight. Go to bed at what for the rest of the week." I said, "Are there any external stopping you? No husband, no partner, no children. No, nothing's stopping me." So I said, "Well, something is stopping you because you want to do it, but you're not doing it. So what is it?" And she just said, "I can't go to bed at 6:30. It's ridiculous." And so we were like, "That's what's stopping you. The feeling, the thought, the
Mm.
story that it is ridiculous." And I said, "But you want it, and you don't even know how much it might help you. You haven't done it yet." And it was interesting. She did the experiment. And at the very end of the training, this was like week one, months later when we finished the training, and we all talking about our takeaways, she said, "Well, my takeaway is I now go to bed early every night and I love it. And it's changed my life. I wake up earlier. I've got more energy, lots of things I didn't know." She spoke to lots of unexpected things and rewards in doing this. She said about going out, or I've got something, I'll obviously go out. It's not a rule I've made. But it had also transferred into other areas of her life where she gave herself permission to do something, even though a little voice was saying, "That's ridiculous," And so it was really beautiful to see how she blossomed, and so much had blossomed for her. And one of the things that had changed was she had more clarity, more presence on making decisions. So one of the big things that had come out of it was she actually changed her job, realized she wanted to be in a different,
Mm.
completely different line of work. How did that happen? It happened from a very small step, really, to listen to her body, listen to the argument, break down the argument and support herself in doing the thing.
I think
Because
that
the
that is so
arguments in
important.
our head are just arguments. The
And
judgments,
a
the
lot of
worry about
it's
others,
a
same
lot of
thing.
it's just not true and not real,
It's not real.
and we've spoken about that before, the different things that prop up, but they can feel very real. They can feel very paralyzing, and they stop many of us, right? The fear, the mind, the ego telling us, no, you can't go that way, or no, you can't do this. And if we listen to it, yeah, we can stay stuck. And so, as you said, letting it have its go, hearing it, listening to it, and then you speaking new dialogue that is words of truth. And that's the truth that emanates from your knowingness and from your soul and from your heart. That's where the truth comes from. But we get led by believing the lies, really, that are just trying to pull us back. So I
Well,
think that,
the beliefs have been in us for a long time, so they've got very comfortable being there. They've taken the most comfortable seat in the house, haven't they? And so, we shouldn't be surprised, but these disruptors, when we disrupt a pattern, it gives us feedback very quickly. It's worth
yeah.
it's don't believe that because it might be something you don't normally do, that's the wrong thing to do. That's probably the right thing to do. We actually are programmed to be able to disrupt patterns very quickly, very effectively, and we're meant to. We're not meant to just be sucked along. There's that expression, I don't know what the expression is, but life. We're with life. Life is with you. It's for you, and you're doing life with life. So it's not that we're being led by anything in particular. And this is also a leadership piece, Amy, because there's this whole idea of following. How many, I'm following this person on Instagram, I'm following this person on Facebook, and we've got used to this. I'm following this person, they're really interesting, and people are interesting, and there are interesting people to follow. But it's become a big common parlance to say, I'm following, I'm following, I'm following.
Mm.
But what's leading you? What's leading you?
Yeah.
Where should we be following from? Should it be, should we have an inner compass, and if you're constantly looking outside to where do I follow, again, this thing's going to get rusty. It's still there, but it's going to get rusty. So when I talk about cultivating instincts, we have so many instincts that our ancestors didn't have anyone to help them with. They just had these instincts: the instinct to build shelter, the instinct to hunt and gather, the instinct for homing, the instinct for nurturing, the instinct for courting and mating, the instinct for procreating, the instinct for pleasure, the instinct for grooming, all of these things. And we still have them. Nothing's changed.
Well, the
No-
only thing that's changed is all of the
yeah. But
information and
inside of
all of
us,
the different
but
channels.
we're not using them. And it is a
Yeah.
muscle that you need to exercise. And of course, our ancestors to survive knew, and because they didn't have anything else to help, they knew. But even for me, I put on maps to go anywhere, even when I'm going for a walk somewhere new, I put on maps, and because it's easier and it saves time.
Mm.
But I'm not looking around. I'm not looking for landmarks. I'm not watching what direction I'm going in. I'm listening to a voice, and I'm like a little robot. Turn left, turn right, go down here. You're in this street. I'm not, our ancestors were looking, mapping, smelling, sensing. And these parts of our body, our physical and metaphysical energetic body, have been gifted to us
Mm.
to give us this path forward, to blaze us in the direction that we as an individual are meant to go. So all of this noise is actually without purpose, because none of this noise is connected to each other. These conversations are all separate conversations. We create the connection when we decide this is my curated feed, right? We're giving over our power, we're giving over ourselves, our hearts, our bodies, to something made up, exactly what you say, made up, a curated feed of other people's storying, largely. if you do want to check in, it's not that we are just reliant on here, but like you and I were talking about, we check in together and we feel, and you know, I've had really good guidance from you. That is different. I've When you say something to me that's guidance, there's a resonance,
Yeah.
right? I'm like, I can see it, I can feel it.
I think that that's really important when you're getting guidance from something, a voice that's external. Really, all that it will be doing is confirming what you already
Mm.
know to be true. There is a resonance. It speaks to you, and I see it almost just as a reminder. I'm just reflecting back to you. And sometimes, quite often, we do need that because I believe, I'm great at guiding for others. I'm great at seeing it for others. I find it harder to see it for myself, right? So I think it's really important to just put that out there. This isn't an easy, clear cut, black and white path where we can just really clearly tune into the voice of our instincts and our intuition over the voice of fear. Yeah, we can, as you say, practice it and work on it and develop it over time. But it does take that, it takes that checking in, and it's like a muscle, like going to the gym and just working on a little bit over time. But I do feel that having some kind of external guidance where it's not a should do this or you need to do this or that kind of thing. It's a reflection back, which just feels, and you feel that in your heart. You know when the guidance is aligned for you. And I could even find that on some channels. It might even be something that I'm scrolling or browsing on social media or something pops up, and I know that that was for me. I know that I
Mm.
needed, and there can be a bit of guidance. It's when we allow this avalanche and we're bombarded and we're swimming in all of this information that we don't know what's left or right or what's front and back. And that's when we lose touch with those innate instinctual senses, which, as you say, they're underutilized in today's world. We're outsourcing it.
And there's a vulnerability piece, because I absolutely agree with you. W- We're not saying don't believe anybody, don't follow anybody. It's just you can't believe everybody and follow everybody, right? So obviously there are your people, there are your things coming through to your vibration, there are messages that are meant for you. All of that's true. But how do you know the difference if you're just an open vessel for all of it? And how we become that often comes through the path of insecurity and self doubt. So, the other part of this is the really important thing for all of us in consciousness now is to really value yourself. We've got to return to valuing ourselves. It's because otherwise, what we're saying is someone else's judgment or opinion or pleasing someone else is more important than me.
This is so important, Al. This is so the piece, like this value, this self-worth, and
And
believing in yourself.
believing it and treating yourself as valuable. You can, even if you don't, if you've had so many messages, and people do, people have some horrible things and, very difficult childhoods and so on, where they've never been given any sense that they're valuable. But you can grow beyond that. You absolutely can grow beyond that, and it's important to do that, to take your power back from those parts of your life and not pass it on, as well. And you can do it by almost, let's what would it be like if just for today I did treat myself as valuable? You can do the treatment part before you do the believing part, because you know we used to say that you have to kind of believe it before you can do it, but actually you can do a lot of things and then realize I can do this. If I've been able to spend one day treating myself as valuable, and how did that make me feel, I can do another day and another day and another day. But what's really important, and it's important to everybody in the collective, because we need to be among people who are valuing themselves and valuing the guidance they're getting too, is that we commit, wherever you are, like anyone listening, whether you're already on this path and you feel I'm pretty good at the self-treatment and everything, go higher. If you are feeling a bit shaky about it, you're not sure, you're a bit lost, get some help, get support. The support is there. Access can you access, can you let in a little bit more of your own love, of your own heart? Can you take those steps, those smaller steps? Because aim to do it. This is life changing for everybody. If
Absolutely.
we all valued ourselves, the world would be so different. If we didn't get into situations where we were burdened with other people's problems of how they think they're going to be judged, that affects everybody, right? I can't do this because people will judge me, affects us because we're not getting the best of that person, because they're not getting the best of themselves. Then we're not getting the truth of each person, if that makes sense.
I think it shows the world how you want to be treated as well. Even, from a
Yeah,
manifestation perspective, it's about the law of receptivity. If we're not allowing ourselves to
yeah.
really take care of ourselves and treat ourselves and look after ourselves and nurture ourselves and nourish, there's no way we're going to be able to then call in those big dreams that we're wanting to manifest, or that abundance, or that partner, or whatever it is that we are seeking at the moment to call in, whatever it is that you're wanting to call into your life this year. It starts with absolutely knowing right now that you're valued and that you're whole, you're lacking nothing.
Exactly, and you can ask yourself this question, who would I be? What would life feel like if I didn't doubt myself?
Yeah.
What would life feel like if I didn't give myself all this negative self-talk and put me down? I mean, those are a
Well,
couple
what
of
would I
questions.
do as well? What
What would I do? What
mean
would my
by
expression of myself be? What without these things, if you journal on those things, if I didn't have self-doubt, if I didn't have negative self-talk, what would that feel like in my body? And how would my energy be in expressing itself? What would I be doing? What would I be feeling? What comes through? And for most people, I mean, I really recommend people do this exercise. There's the feeling of, oh, we just got rid of a whole lot of sludge, the heaviness, the layers, the weight that's on us. We feel lighter and we feel brighter, and we can move faster, we can be more fluid, we can be more confident. And really, it's a discipline that when you hear yourself not treating yourself well, what would be better treatment of myself in this moment? I mean, it isn't a really tricky question.
Mm.
And
I
the
think the other
barrier
yeah, you
is just a feeling of resistance. No one's pinning you down, literally. No one's locking you in a room saying, no, you can't have this pleasure, this freedom, this joy, except for something inside of you. And the only way for you to get rid of that resistance is to soften through it and do the thing anyway. It's the only way.
resistance is always gonna be there, right?
Yeah.
It's
But
not a
not forever. I mean, having been on this journey myself, I'm in a different place than I was a decade ago, and even a year ago, you
mm,
know,
mm,
and even maybe some months ago. If you're on a growth path, you're not stuck with the same things forever. This is the karmic clearing piece. When these things come up, there's a bigger piece, which is that they're being asked, do you want to carry this? Because you don't have to. Or is this now time to heal this, clear this, assimilate this, let this move away from your life? This is not part of the piece anymore. This is not part of the piece, so that you can move forward. So you're not always stuck with the same doubts. There are doubts I used to have that were, you know, always came into my head, that slowed me down, that stopped me doing things. Um, and they just don't exist anymore. And so in my life, I'm doing everything I want to do, really. And why? Really, the only thing that's changed, nothing changed externally in my circumstances to make this possible. Everything started from an internal shift. And
mm.
the internal shift was, I can't carry on believing this. I can't carry on abandoning myself to this belief. I'm fed up with my own, BS basically on some level, and this I've got to put this down. And you don't just put it down once, because as you said, they get very ingrained. They're part of us. You make a practice of every day and every time it comes up of making the choice to put it down. That's the work part. But honestly, the gift of it is the more you see yourself doing that, the more you kind of take the joy piece, which is, well, who knew I can put this down? Maybe I have to keep putting it down because there's a lot of it to kind of clear. But you do get to another side, and then you see that. And then, of course, there's other things that are going to come up for me, and they are for all of us, and especially this year. And this full moon, in fact, because a lot of clearing needs to happen in our consciousness. But take it as a gift. Take it as a gift, rather than think, oh my goodness, this is a sign I'm doing things wrong. Think about your values. What do you really want? Do you want to trust yourself? Do you want to feel good? Do you want to be able to give yourself good self-treatment and then see what comes from that? Do you want your yeses to come into blossom? In that case, see this as a gift, because it's quite rare we get to see our stuff in a way that we can be so conscious of it. So often, especially I think in our past lives up to here, we've done a lot of stuff on a more of an automatic way, and we're much more awake now. And we're being shown stuff in that awakeness, so that we cannot say, "Oh, look at me, I'm so rubbish. I'm holding stuff here in my hands." If you're listening, we can actually say, "Oh, that's the stuff, is it? Right, well, we don't want that stuff. We need to now clear that stuff." It's good to see what's there. It's coming to light. It's coming to light. But don't be afraid of it. Look up, be compassionate, be loving. There could be some wounds there. I know there were for me. There were wounds and actual experiences that I didn't give consent to. That stuff is there. So be super kind. Send that love and healing back through the generations. That's a power you have, that's a capacity you have. And then say how great to move forward with everybody, everything from past to now and future, free of this. That is an amazing gift.
And the question, I think that other question then which naturally comes up is, where am I not being valued? And the decisions that are going to need to be made from that, from asking yourself that question. And I know you and I have done this in different ways, in different circumstances, whether that's professionally or in business or relationships or whatnot. It naturally comes up when you are really looking after yourself, valuing yourself, taking good care of yourself. There's that natural elevation in your frequency, that natural raising of your vibration. And so
Mm,
there are going to be things that are not valuing you anymore, that you're just
mm.
not a vibratory match for. And that's when the no's need to come into play.
And I'm so glad you raised that, because that's coming up so much at this time. And, that's when you're in that vibration that you speak to, when you are valuing yourself with good self-treatment, one thing you get is a lot of intuitive clarity. You get clarity back.
Mm.
It is so clear and you can't ignore it. And things that you might have let go before when you were in a lower self-treatment, you're not willing to compromise on because it's illogical to you. It does not make sense on any level to you to feel this way. We get used to feeling good. We get used to feeling good because we're treating ourselves well. And then when you're in a situation where the vibration is not making you feel good, it's so then easy to see that. And your tolerance level changes, actually. I think it really does. And your third eye really pings more clearly. So the opposite is true. So if you're not really valuing yourself and treating yourself well, and an example of that is you do compromise a lot on, well, I am very tired, but I'm still going to go to the wedding. Or this came up for someone recently there was a couple, and one of them said, I want to go to the beach this weekend. I don't want to go to this wedding we're supposed to go to. And they did go to the beach, but it messed with her partner's head, because he was someone who says, I'm someone. I said, why does that mess with your head? And he said, because I'm someone, when you commit to something, you do it. Okay. No, when you commit to something and the time comes and you can't do it, you rely on people's understanding to let you that you're not going to be able to make it. And if they don't understand, there's nothing you can do about that.
That's just a
And
beautiful
certainly you
example of the
can't buy into,
story.
therefore I have to go because you don't understand, is a very low vibration exchange, right, of energy.
Mm, mm.
No one benefits from that. You're being somewhere where you don't want to be because the person who wanted you there is making you feel guilty for not being there. who's benefiting from this this energy exchange? So
Yes.
what was wonderful was seeing the two sides of the couples. And then she said to me, "You'll be proud of me." She knows I preach on this all the time. And I said, "I'm very proud, but I'm very interested in your partner's viewpoint on this, because this is so interesting to me. Like, why would you feel just because you said you have to do something, you have to do, my word is my bond? I mean, not in an emergency, it's a bit different, but this isn't an emergency." So anyway, the why I spoke to that is because really high self-treatment is listening to your body, listening to your instincts. And this isn't little sacrifice, this is big sacrifice, because if you sacrifice yourself for the and show up to things, for example, which are going to be an energy drain on you, who knows what's that's going to be doing to your energy the next day and the next day. There's always a knock-on effect, right? We don't just recover from that's a complete misguided thing. We tell ourselves, "Oh, it'll be fine, I'll push through it, then I'll be fine the next day." You won't. We know it's a lie. And we're learning to take care of ourselves really well, because we need to be available to do important things for each other, right? And for the planet. So we need to be able to prioritize. If that's an example of something you don't need to do. If you're not valuing yourself and you're giving in and you're compromising to things like, "Well, I should, or I must, or this is what people do," you are more likely to find yourself, as we were speaking, as you were just speaking to Amy, in relationships, places, spaces, energy spaces with people who are causing suffering in your energy body for you, and you feel it, and you're not therefore able, you're still anxious or fatigued or annoyed and crabby, whatever the energy around you is making you feel. And so you're delaying and procrastinating on being you and flowing things into the world, and it's not worth it. And you are worth it, and you're worth more. When you get the reverse of this, to learning to listen to your body, be guided by it, um, and you moving now in different spaces as a result, as you're saying, and the things you don't do anymore, so your health has improved, your energy has improved, the things you do that help improve your health and energy, everybody's benefiting. And you get to see what things, where your places where you would have been vulnerable, you get to really see them, so that you don't have to look back and say, "Why did I stay in that relationship so long? Why did I agree to a new contract with that, you know, business I'm contracted to? Why did I agree to do this, that, and the other?" You get to see very clearly the warnings, the red flags, and they're really easy as well for you to say no to, because you've seen paradise literally, and you're not going back to hell. It's like you will notice the difference. And honestly, having lived in an energy body where I did put myself through things which I now well, I don't regret, because I try not to have regrets, but I've learned from them.
Yeah. Yeah.
It was a lot. I am never doing that to myself again. That is a sacred contract I have with me. It is a vow. I'm never doing that to Alison again. And I also teach this because I don't want people to have to go through what I went through. It was unnecessary, or it was necessary to learn from, but in no future lifetime will I go through that again.
Mm.
I know it. I know what it feels like in my body. And I'm so grateful for this course of development and learning. And so it started with this idea that I could treat myself better, and this idea that my yeses and my nos were so precious to me, and making that connection. And maybe there were parts of me thinking, "But what will happen? Will I still have friends? Will I still be, will people like me?" Because that would be normal. And I honestly was at such a desperate point where I was like, "I just have to feel better." And to have gone from there to where I am now, which is like, I don't even get into those questions. It's
Mm.
like, this is the right thing to do. If it's in my highest good, then everything's going to be taken care of. I'm taking care of my part. We're co-creating, right? In supporting myself, I'm allowing the higher energies of support to support me and bring beautiful, supportive people into my life, like you, Amy, right? I have no shortage of good people in my life.
Mm.
And luckily, I have a complete shortage of people who I don't want to have it. I mean, in the nicest possible way, who are the sort of people that probably wouldn't treat me the way that
Mm,
I would want to be treated, right? And with no, I say that with no anger. I just say that with, if that's not in their capacity, and we're going to be in some kind of relationship of energy, exchange together, that is not going to work, is it?
mm, mm. And this is that's because of how you the relationship that you have cultivated, that you know to be so strong, and you had those tougher lessons that
Mm.
got you to that place, right?
Mm.
For others it can be harder, right? If you're not pushed up against, for you it became like a survival and there was
Yeah.
no other choice, and so you know and you've got an embodied experience that there is no way that you are going to abandon yourself in any possible way. And you can speak so beautifully to that because you've been schooled in that here in in on
Yeah.
earth, and many haven't, and I think that that's where it does become challenging. However, as we know, when we're not heeding the signs, when we're not getting those little warning signs, we're not following that guidance, that you know what, maybe you've got a bit too much on your plate, or maybe saying yes to that isn't for your highest good. I know for me, and I've shared this in my community, one of the things that I do every day, and I think you do it as well, Ali, is this checking in piece of, okay, is this for my highest good? Because we can tend to, in our personality and our patterns, which are ruled a lot by our thoughts and our beliefs, just go straight into our natural mode of operating, which may for some people be, yes, I can do that. Yes, I can do this. I know we've spoken about this before, but coming back to this way of um, paving a new way where we are being led by our instincts rather than the past conditioning. And we've spoken about the pathway to our heart, and then going that step deeper and get that step further in that self inquiry and asking our soul, you know, is this for my highest good? And that takes, I believe, and you can speak to this as well, getting really, really present with ourselves.
Mhm.
People ask, how do you do that and how do you cultivate that? Do you want to speak to that a little bit as well? Because I know that one of the most important things is being able to be in the present moment, to come
Yeah.
home to ourselves.
Yeah. You speak to it beautifully, Amy. And, you know, I think it's recognizing that as humans, especially in life today, there's this thing about always getting to the next thing, to the next thing, to the next thing, the sense of urgency. And so not taking those moments to pause. Like the first thing when you wake up, or when you're transit, I really, really recommend taking moments of transition when you've finished one activity before you move into the next.
Mm,
Because your mind can run away with your to-do list. You've done that. What are you doing next? I've got into a habit now, like even after I finish this, I'm going to settle into my being, even though I've got a list of things to do, and I'm going to reconnect to things I have to do and think, but what is the next thing? I actually talk to myself out loud. I go, okay, this will be me after this, right? It'll be me. Okay, what time is it? Okay, I've got to go to Kmart, get some stuff for my holiday, or and then I'll kind of pause, take a breath, and really go into my being, into my breath, into my body. Remember this valuable soul that's living this bigger life inside of me. And this just takes, a few minutes, hand on heart, feeling the bigger energies around me. And then a little voice might say, have a cup of coffee first, something like that. It usually does say, have lunch or go and sit in the sun for 5 minutes. It'll give me another prompt. Um, Taking that little bit of space, because then that can reorganize, that can change what you're going to think of doing next. Taking that time and that space to check in. When you're at a crossroads, or when you've got a decision to make, often people try to make decisions very, very quickly, and there are a number of decisions we have to make quickly, like you're on the road and you're driving and so on. But not every decision has to be made at speed. I think we've got used to being very instant messagey about everything and
mm,
instant responding. So with yourself, that question, is this in my highest interest, is a beautiful question. For one thing, it guides you to the idea of highest interests. If you're new to this kind of idea, wow, there is higher interests. Because for some people, that's new language, right?
Mm,
Just
mm.
by repeating it to yourself in your check-in, you're opening up a new perspective, a new channel for yourself that you haven't always had this. It might have been, will I get this done in time? Have I got time to slip this in before the school run? Now it's, is this in my highest interest? And the second thing, something that we were taught in my original yoga teacher training was to ask, when you come to a decision, is this life enhancing for me? Which I really love. That is the question. Is this life enhancing? Because don't forget, pleasure is an instinct. Enrichment is what, my belly, as soon as I said life enhancing, my belly goes like sparkles, like there's a million diamonds inside of
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
You are allowed to enrich your life. You know that you want to enrich your life. Everyone's looking for a richer life, on every level, more pleasurable, more free, more time, more presence, more space, more love, more joy. Is this life enhancing for me? I like that because it's got that kind of tonal quality of, is it going to bring goodness in? Don't forget to connecting to goodness is very powerful. We have an instinct for love, pleasure, playfulness. It's
Yeah.
not just about nesting, resting, digesting. It really is. These are instincts. And believe it or not, our very early ancestors who were are very much in survival a lot of the time, we know they had time to make beautiful pieces of art and paint on the walls of their caves and play with their children in the lakes and learn astrology by lying on their backs looking at the stars. They had time for it and they were in high survival mode. We've got opportunity to be very discerning about how we use time. It's a complete myth
It
for
is.
most of us that we don't have time.
I love that you're speaking to
you
this,
know?
and this piece, what you were talking about with feeling good and experiencing pleasure and fun and joy. You and I have spoken a lot about this year, and choosing it for yourself, right?
Mm.
Like really claiming it for yourself that I'm allowing myself to, I'm choosing that what I'm doing is fun, it's pleasurable, and I'm getting well rewarded for that. I think, we have this idea that in order to make money, in order to achieve anything, it requires hard work, and hard work isn't really fun, right? It's not fun and joy. So, we've got to change this patterning and this wiring. And as you said with that gentleman who was, wanting to go to or feeling he needed to go to the wedding. Like, we really have to do the work on the stories and the beliefs that are coming up, because they're just ruling us on autopilot, right? Life needs to be hard. In many ways we get addicted to that, into that patterning. So choosing to feel good, choosing joy, choosing pleasure, I actually feel like this is a hack for manifestation. I feel like this is a complete hack, like claiming what you want and then choosing to feel good. This isn't bypassing, by the way, guys. This is really opening up yourself to allow the good feelings, because that is what we are. Joy is our innate nature.
Mm. And life is beautiful. I mean, in a very I'll tell a story from my life that might um, illuminate this a bit. But this is from years and years ago, I was living in London and I was so in my head and I was very anxious and I was always ruminating and I didn't feel good enough and I didn't feel like I was doing enough. But it was hard. This is a story of suffering. Um, real mental suffering, and life was not fun. And I, as a child, I was always an outdoor girl and I loved the sky, a real sky child, and I loved just gazing at the moon, gazing at the stars, talking to the moon, talking to the stars. And I really felt during this time where I was suffering so much, and I think people can maybe relate to this, that I knew, I was very aware I'd lost touch with myself, especially who I was as a child, because for me that's very much who I really am. It's very intuitive, very free in my nature. Anyway, every week, just like we do here, we had to take the bins from the top of the driveway to the bottom of the driveway where we lived, right? And every week I remember hauling those 2 bins out to the bottom of the thing, looking up at the sky, seeing the stars. It just breaks my heart even when I remember this, and saying, "I'm sorry, I will come back to you one day." And
Mm.
going back indoors to carry on this. I've got to solve this problem of who I am and not being enough. I've got to do more. I've got to solve it. I've got to, and giving myself torture, literally torturing myself. Um, and now I have a practice, and I've done it ever since actually we moved to Australia 15 years ago, because it's so beautiful, the tropical nights where we live, right? That I go outside and I literally like worship the stars. I lie on my back in my recliner. I do it every evening and I gaze up there, and I know that I'm almost still making up for lost time, or there's a benevolence going on. There's a healing going on where I'm like, I'm never gonna not look at you again. And when I take the bins out, I stop, and before I go in the house, I sit down and I look up again, because the difference between me then and me now is, life isn't about head down, get on with it. One day you can take a rest or something. Life is now, and it's speaking to you, and the stars and the trees and the birds and the sky and the grass are speaking to you. And they're sending so much into your body, so much energy, vibrancy, communication. And we live in magic, literally, and we are magic. And this other stuff that takes you out of that is heartbreaking. That is missing the whole point of it all.
Yeah.
And I don't have to pay money to look at the sky, feel the grass or the trees. They're just around me and they're waiting. They're longing for this connection. There is an interbeing that we live in. It's not just for us, it's for all these other parts of an environment we're in. And the idea of postponing this, that's toxic and dangerous and harmful. And it's a suffering story for you and for life, right?
So let that be an invitation if you're listening to this podcast. What's something that you could do today or right now just for the experience of doing it, just for the fun and the joy of doing it and allowing it to light you up? That's why this podcast is called Light Up, because I know the quickest way to our expansion and to be living a life that is on purpose and joyful and fulfilled is via those channels of doing the things that make us feel alive and light us up. And as you say, they can be the simple things. I mean, nature is our biggest teacher. Nature has so many. Whenever I really want to tap into my guidance, and if I'm struggling with doing that at home, I go to the beach or I go for a walk in the national park and I get out in nature, and our channel becomes so much more refined and clear. I mean, we are channels, we are conduits for the divine. The divine is all around us in everything that we can see. And the tragedy is when we forget and we over identify with all of the different things that are on our plate and the roles that we play. So I love that beautiful reminder. And that's like so heartwarming and so heartbreaking at the same time that you looked up at those stars and said, beautiful. I can so imagine you doing that as well. And particularly at the moment in winter here in Australia and up Queensland where we are, sky is so alive right now. Like there's not the clouds and you can just see it and it's so contactable. So on that note, let's chat about, you've been coming into the light place and doing your monthly full moons and energy reads. For those who haven't joined us, because do you want to just speak about this next one, which is in July, but also the format of how you run it? Because it's not just a meditation, although the meditations, can I say, are so divine and so deep. And in that, Al, I think mentioning, because this is a really important piece, the importance of coming together as community in groups and feeling that you're not alone, right? Because we can be so isolated in our lives, particularly if you feel like you're on more of this soul journey, spiritual awakening, you can feel really alone. So just with the potency of coming together and sharing and being part of community So
The
valuable.
coming together in a full moon circle is something that has been done since the very beginning of humanity, through ancient times to now. And it's remarkable in every corner of the world that's been happening, right? And that says something. It is a powerful, energetic time for the collective. So, in any place where you're gathering as a part of the collective, you're amplifying the energy that's coming in for each other, not by doing anything or saying anything, just by being together. And we feel that, don't we, when we're in circle, and it's online, but there's a tangible feeling, and you can see each other online if people want to be seen. You don't have to, but we do meet and greet. It's very informal. People turn up in their PJs. We have people from the UK who's in the morning and people in the evening in Australia. But there is this sense, it's very beautiful, of being able to show up as yourself. And in maybe if you're in a world where you're being told, oh, it's nonsense and it's or whatever, you're with people who don't think it's nonsense, and you don't have to understand or know a lot about it. You're just guided. It's a calling in you, and you want to be with other people who feel that calling. It's a very safe space. It's a very welcoming space. And then what I like to do is, for each full moon, of course, the there's a different there are different planets communing with each other and with us in particular ways. So there's a particular message coming through. So I like to speak to the main message, how we might be feeling that in our lives, and what the guidance might be going forward, and giving some reminders of how we can access um, these these actions, really, these action steps in ourselves and all in our just in our daily life. A lot of the reminders that come through at these great celestial events are about our spiritual worthiness, our aliveness, the importance of what we feel in our own bodies. It's very affirming of your selfhood and your soul, right? And I think it's beautiful that the energies do that for us. They come in to offer us opportunities to clear things away and to amplify the good in our lives. And so we get guidance on that. So I ground us into a nice gathering at the beginning. Then I speak to the energy guidance. I usually offer some journaling prompts that you can take away with you, or some things to think about, and plus some action steps you might take. And then we go into a longer meditation to finish really feeling those messages assimilating in our own individual bodies.
Mm.
And that's when people often feel a reset or an inspiration. It's very interesting. We're coming up to a full moon right now, right in a few days' time, and it's always kind of slightly wobbly, edgy period. I don't know if people listening find that before full moons. It would be very normal to feel that, and actually meant to be that way, because we're being shown um, how to move forward in a new cycle of consciousness. Each new month after the full moon is a whole new cycle of consciousness. And there are things karmically that we're particularly being called to look at, to be very discerning about whether we want these things to continue in our lives or not, and things we do want to continue in our lives. It's great to get that guidance. We're being so supported. The support really wants to hug into us and embrace us. It really comes into our circles and does that. And it's a format that people really, really seem to enjoy and benefit from.
Mm. It's beautiful. I mean, you've been doing it the last few months, so we don't have a full moon this month because we had a new moon one because Ali is going to be away, but we've got the June one. So I will put the information in
The
the show
July one.
notes. July, sorry. I'll put the information in the show notes so that you can book in. I love because it's on a Sunday evening when we do it. I'm in my PJs. I usually have my little hot water bottle and my bolsters, and it's lovely. It's a lovely little touch point that really just brings you back home. And I think, I meditate every day, but there's a certain next level potency when we join together and when we do it in a group. So I think that's really exciting. And the other thing that Ali's been a part of as well is the Light Path Collective, which we've got going, which is our fortnightly membership. And I know, Al, you're going to be taking the group in a couple of weeks' time, or when you're back from New Zealand as well. And it's another way to be in community. And we go more into this leadership via our intuition and into, looking at how we can walk this path with greater courage and self-belief and trust, and how we can call on those bigger energies that we have all got access to be able to support us in navigating this path, and that we don't need to walk it alone. So it's a really great community to be a part of. So please come and join us in that as well. Um, just on another little note to finish off, I want to ask you this question, being light up, what are the things at the moment in your life that are lighting you up? What are your practices, or doesn't even need to be practices, just what do you feel right now in your life is everything for you?
For me at the moment, it's family. It's my husband and my daughter. She's on the cusp probably of leaving home and flying off into the bigger, wider
Mm.
world. And I love that the Alison I am now isn't so bothered about all the things I should be doing or catching up with, that I can really be present with these moments so that the future Alison, when she's not in my home anymore, doesn't have any regrets. That I've really spent time. It really likes it's simple things in the evenings. It's cozy. I love it when I'm like stirring something on the stove. The family are going to come together for dinner. We've drawn the curtains. My husband usually puts some jazz music on, glass of wine. Just those moments, they're beautiful. And then mornings, I'm just so in love with mornings. I go to bed thinking, I'm so excited about morning. I get up
Mm.
early. It's cold, but I wrap myself in blankets outside. I like to get the early sun rays here. I have the most delicious cup of coffee in the world and my journal. I talk to my spirit guides, and honestly, I think those are my two favorite times of day at the moment. That's really lighting me up. Also anticipating going on holiday together. I love the anticipation. I just love the
Mm.
connecting to we're about to have some time together. I think togetherness is like really lighting me up at the moment with my favorite people. Yeah.
Yeah, I
How
love
about you?
that. That's so important. Well, in beautiful alignment, the mornings for me, I've always been a bit of an early riser, but I would tend to get up and just run out the door and go for my walk. Partly because I felt that I needed to do the exercise, but I did also love it. But this year, the guidance has been very different, and it's been to just really stay in. And my meditation practice has kind of gone to another level. So I do a good hour of meditating. Not that you need to do that, but I'm just really enjoying that. And that's the time when I do, and I commune with soul, um when I get my guidance, and I can watch the sunrise, and it's everything. It's beautiful. So I too, and interestingly, again, in alignment, my afternoons, I often send you a little voice message when I'm doing my walk. I take Star, my dog, down to the beach, and I'm loving the dusk there at like 5 o'clock, and the sky is like
Mhm.
rainbow skies and fairy floss skies. It's just so beautiful as the sun's setting. So that is definitely lighting me up among other things at the moment. So yeah, beautiful alignment there. Ah, as always, so wonderful to chat, and we'll be chatting more. And if you want to be more a part of Ali's world, I'll put some links in there as well. But also feel free to jump into Full Moon or pop into Light Path Collective, and we're there to support you too. All right, my dear. Anything else you want to say?
Oh, I think that was a beautiful conversation. Just thank you. Thank you so much for having me again. Always so great when we talk.
Yeah, love it. All
And
right. Thanks, darling.